What's going on, people? We're back for another Sunday, another Lost recap. We are counting them down towards the end. We've got about 2 weeks left. And man, Luke, after I would say about 2 weeks of not the worst episodes, but not great episodes either. You know, we had the awesome Boone episode, and then we had the Michael episode, which was kind of just a setup episode, and then Charlie's episode, which was a good homecoming, which was a good episode, but it was mostly plot focused. This episode, I feel like, is where we're getting back to, you know, the Lost that we loved for those first couple of like 8-9 episodes or so, just about with Outlaws. This is the second Sawyer backstory episode. We get, this is a doozy of an episode. This is a really, really good episode.
Yeah, we've had a few, from my view at least, a few lackluster flashback episodes, but this one is like, oh yeah. Yes. For once, the flashback is more compelling than the island stuff.
Exactly. Sure. Exactly. Yeah. Yes. As they say in later seasons, they are constantly saying, we have to go back. Well, I can officially say, we're back with Talkin Lost. All right, Outlaws, the second Sawyer backstory episode. The reason why I love this episode so much in particular is because it got back to, like we were saying in the intro, the stuff that we loved about those first couple episodes of Lost, which was showing how the characters' backstories heavily factored into not only their decisions to board the plane, which would eventually lead them to the island, but how it would affect them once they were on the island. You know, we saw that heavily with Jack, with Claire. I thought it was done really particularly well with her solo backstory episode. Locke, and now we're seeing it with Sawyer as well, where it's revealed, obviously, in a continuation of his last episode, Confidence Man, where it was revealed that, again, he took the name Sawyer after the man who conned his parents out of their money, causing his father to kill his mother, and send him on this lifelong kind of mission of vengeance. And now we see in this episode how those decisions may have gotten the better of him and turned him into somebody that he ultimately wasn't, and how that started, and how those decisions are coming back to haunt him a little bit on the island. It's funny because what I didn't remember. So, funnily enough, this narrative structure they would actually use again once we get into season 2, but for a different character. But I'd forgotten that they used it first on Sawyer in this episode, and I can just say right now that it's used much better with Sawyer personally, especially since, you know, this is another instance where you also have characters interacting, you know, with each other before they got to know each other on the island. So just from an outlier perspective, like what did you think of this episode in terms of like what it is, bringing out once again the best of what we love about Lost?
Yeah, exactly. Just the best of everything. Maybe not quite the island mystery. We're not focusing on that episode, but on the character development, which you insist is like one of the strong points of the whole show overall. And yeah, Sawyer just keeps climbing my own ranks. I think it's Locke and it's Sawyer at this point. Yeah, he has a great sort of tandem with Kate in this episode. They have the drinking game, which kind of foreshadows, spoils the rest of the episode, but in any case, it hooks you even more so. You want to know more about what his backstory was, and we do find out. He has a fun scene with Saeed. He's like, "Hey, you hear something in the woods? I don't know. Did you hear something?" So it's the kind of relationship building there after their quarrel in earlier episodes, and the whole boar side plot. I think it's if this were like a less serious show, like Sawyer has beef with a boar, would be like a great sort of comedic side plot for an episode. But it comes back around to his backstory and what that means for his character.
Well, it's just hilarious, the boar instance in and of itself. But what I love that this episode does is it's once again peeling back the layers of Sawyer, you know? Like we've been saying since the start of the show, Sawyer was introduced kind of as this antagonistic figure. And as the show has gone on, certain characters who we thought were going to be important have kind of been pushed back to the sidelines, and certain other characters who we weren't sure how we felt about, they've been kind of pushed to the forefront. Oh, excuse me. Sorry, I'm just getting over getting I was sick this past weekend. So you have all of that happening. But the other reason why I love this episode in particular is because this is a thing that not only ties into Lost, but Damon Lindelof as well, which is Damon Lindelof is obsessed with the idea of life and death. You see that, and kind of how they intersect and all of the different facets, people who we interact with. how those interactions influence how our brain perceives reality. All of that, you see it very heavily explored both in this show, in The Leftovers, in Watchmen. He's all about that. And the things you see in particular in this episode, with a lot of other characters too, but particularly in this episode, how, kind of the whispers that Sawyer first hears in the forest at the beginning of the episode, and how the main phrase that is kind of underlying this entire episode, which is it'll come back around. This whole idea of like this karmic vengeance, if you will, the idea of good karma and bad karma, if you kind of believe in that stuff. All of these things as far as where human beings can be like devoutly believe in all of this stuff, or they can think that it's all just complete hokum. But Damon Lindelof, I love, is constantly trying to straddle the middle line between that, but he never likes to give clear answers because there are no clear answers when it comes to this stuff, and that to me is what makes this sort of storytelling really, really good, I think, when he's not giving any answers. And again, this kind of ties into overall what we're trying to explore with this recap show is obviously as we got into the later seasons, the show became much more action and plot focused rather than character focused. A lot of people say that that's when Lost started to lose its stride. Now, personally, we'll see, obviously, once we get to that, especially because we know that it was probably the network censors that were trying to push him into a more conclusive conclusion as opposed to Lindelof and Carlton Cuse, who are always trying to keep it way more ambiguous. So, But that's kind of what I love really about here, is that ultimately what starts off as a journey of Sawyer just trying to find a boar that seems to be fucking with him nonstop turns out to be, again, kind of another ghost from the past. And this is another thing that, again, we've seen with a lot of different characters. Jack with his dad, Kate with the briefcase, Locke being able to walk, what's it called?
And we still don't know what he saw.
Exactly. We still don't know what he saw.
I mean, but I don't.
Well, yeah. Well, that's the thing. I'm still not even sure if I know. So, once again, kind of all of this kind of karmic resolution that comes with all these characters. Like I said, all of these characters have suffered some sort of tragedy in their past. All of these characters have, all these characters have some sort of trauma that they need to overcome. And how Lindelof is constantly interested in exploring that trauma through means of, like, the line between life and death is so fascinating. And the fact that he, for the most part, always manages to hit it. And it's commendable, to say the least.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I just my mind drifted off. I started thinking about things. But yeah, I do love the more spiritual ambiguousness of the whole island. It's added more mystery to it. I guess they're gonna try and do a definite conclusion when we get there in 2 years. But I'm just really enjoying it for the moment. Just the bare bones of these characters. Because I always look at TV. It's like, when I get to the last season of a show, I try to look back at where they were in season 1. It's like a whole progression, they're completely different. So I'm looking forward to see how all these characters change over their time on the island and whatnot.
Yeah, there's a reason why TV, I feel like, strikes harder with our generation than it did with generations in the past, because generations in the past, TV was always just about, okay, how can we keep people entertained in the moment? So TV kind of was always, again, it was sitcoms and drama and medical dramas and cop dramas. It was always these kind of one-off, like, drama situations that would be always resolved at the end of 30 or 60 minutes. But the fact that our generation was kind of gifted with the long-form running story arcs, the idea of storylines that wouldn't be paid off for seasons to come, and kind of how that's evolved now, I think, again, it's made modern TV even worse as far as the attention spans with streaming, but it's kind of made some of these shows that we've grown up with really, really that much better and that much more satisfying when you're able to see the payoff. Well, first off, when you're watching it in real time, but then years later when you're able to watch the whole thing back on streaming. So this is why I love streaming in the first place, because I'm like, oh, we're just going to be able to finally go back and rewatch with ease all of these incredible shows that we had growing up. And then obviously it changed the whole model. And if you ask me, it made TV go for the worst. But let's get to the actual what happens in this episode. So like I said, Sawyer wakes up. There's a boar that's fucking around in his tent. He's getting pissed off. He also wakes up because he's hearing whispers. It's interesting here because the flashbacks in this episode are also kind of dreams. They're not just flashbacks. Sawyer's dreaming about his past. He has dreams about his father breaking into his house, killing his mother, and then shooting himself on top of Sawyer's bed. The flashbacks here show that Sawyer is contacted by a man that he's dealt with before, played by Robert Patrick, the T-1000 himself, who sends him to Australia. So that reveals why Sawyer was in Australia, to supposedly find the man who conned his family out of his money. He goes, he buys the gun, He gets cold feet at first, when he first meets the man and leaves.
The
Then he ends
shrimp looked good though.
Those,
Like, I
those
was
shrimp
like,
did look very good. Shrimp straight off the babby, mate. But then what's it called? He goes to a bar, runs into unexpectedly Jack's dad, of all people. They end up having conversations. Jack's dad obviously having found himself in Australia after Jack got him fired. And then obviously Jack's dad kind of unintentionally gives him the courage to go and finish the job. Once again, kind of setting Jack's dad up as this devil figure that may or may not play in later seasons. Sawyer goes, finally kills the man. The man in his dying breath reveals that not only was he not the man who conned Sawyer's family, but he was just some random dude who was in debt to Robert Patrick, who Robert Patrick then blatantly used Sawyer's quest for vengeance against. And Sawyer realizes that he majorly fucked up, and before the guy dies, he's like, it'll come back around, which of course leads us back to the island where, like I said, Sawyer is being haunted and plagued by whispers in the woods that it'll come back around. He's talking to Sayid. He's not sure what's going on. He goes on a mission with Kate into the woods in order to try and find the boar, get his stuff back. What's it called? Then him and Kate have a little drinking game. They sit down. They talk about their thoughts, what they've done in the past, what they haven't. And they both have a little moment where they both lied. I'll say this right now. This is a little spoiler. They both lied at the end when Sawyer's like, I never killed a man. And then they both drink. I'm like, ooh, you're both lying here. This is where it's going to get interesting and juicy. But while they're on the quest, they run into Locke.
wait, but he did kill the guy.
He did. No. He says, I never killed a man. And then he. Oh no, you're right. I'm sorry. I'm misinterpreting. The game gets confusing. All right.
This is why there's two of us here.
It is. It's the wording. That's what it is. The wording of it always confuses me. So they run into Locke while they're on their quest in the woods. Locke tells him the story about how when his sister died when he was very young, his foster mother was distraught until a golden retriever showed up, slept in his sister's room for about 5 years before it departed, and that was kind of their way of moving past the trauma of his sister's death, basically leading them to reveal or to realize that, you know, even though the person's dead, there are other things that may come back and have a way of like reminding you and helping you move on. And so of course Sawyer and Kate get into an argument. They separate. Sawyer finds first they get into an argument because Sawyer finds a baby boar and is trying to use it as bait. Kate tells him to let it go. Kate leaves. Sawyer ends up finding the boar, is about to hold the gun to it. Kate manages to convince him to let it go. Sawyer does. The karmic resolution is resolved. Sawyer finally lets go of the sins of his past, or so we think. There's also one last interaction that he has with Jack when he gives the gun back to Jack, where Sawyer says, where Jack drops a little line, like, that's why the Sox will never win the World Series. And that was the same line that Jack's father said to Sawyer in the bar in Australia, and that's what leads Sawyer to make the connection. Oh, shit. I was talking with Jack's dad, and he chooses not to tell Jack that he met his dad. And
I'm sure it'll come up.
It'll come up, yeah. But
you don't just put that in there if you're not gonna pay it off somehow. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, it's another one of those incredible moments where, again, so much is said with barely anything being said, because just the look in Sawyer's face and kind of, again, sowing the seeds of how all of these characters are connected, like before they got on the plane and all that. I love this stuff. That stuff is like my catnip. That's what like really is the driving underlying force of the show. And then there's a quick.
And you're saying this isn't the last of the character connections
No, it is not. No, it is not. No, it is not. Like I said, there's going to be a couple more of this. I don't remember how many exactly, but there's going to be at least a couple more of this. Also, there's a quick subplot where Hurley starts to worry about Charlie after he killed Ethan last episode, and he talks to Sayid. Sayid has a quick conversation with Charlie, and then at the end, Charlie's sort of over it, and then he's back and talking with Claire at the end, who is starting to remember things. So like I said.
And we get a glimpse of the raft being built.
Yes, we do, in the background. Yeah, the raft, the constant construction of the raft, which I thought was going to be more of a focus, but from what I understand, it's going to be more of a focus next episode. Also, we haven't been seeing a lot of Locke and Boone digging up the hatch, but that'll also come up in another couple of episodes as well. Man, like I said, so while the second half of the season has not been as strong and consistent as the first half, still, like I said, a lot of plot that was set up that is kind of being explored in the background. So, like I said, really, really fucking good episode.
Absolutely. Because, I was thinking the more we learn about the characters, the less interesting the flashbacks may get. So then what do? They throw this at me. They're like, hey, we still have more character to tell you about. So it's just keeping that balance between island stuff and flashback stuff that's the real strength of the show, I think. If you can keep both sides engaging, then yeah.
Not only when you keep both sides engaging, but when you keep them connected, really. Because I think that kind of where the weaker Lost episodes don't work, and obviously every episode has this, but it's when the best Lost episodes to me are when, at least for this section of the show, that's going to change obviously once we get into the later seasons, but the best episodes for me of this section of the show are where the flashbacks really interact with and influence, and they kind of act in like this perfect this perfect symbiosis, if you will, with the mainline island stuff that's going on. That to me is when the show is at its best. Because even when like the Michael episode or the second Charlie episode, those episodes are still good and solid, but there's like a little bit of a disconnect. When what's going on the island is more plot focused, the flashbacks are more more or less character focused, but there's not as much of a connection. And I'm wondering if this had any decision as far as Lindelof's decision with which characters to kill off as time went on, The irony being that so far, still, after the pilot, my favorite episode this season has been Hearts and Minds, the Boone backstory episode, because even though the flashbacks there were kind of shitty, everything that was going on the island was so fucking good and compelling and interesting as far as kind of the mental journey that the kind of the torture that the island put Boone through. Now, maybe I'm coming at that from a perspective of somebody who knows what's going to happen, but still, like, I feel like the best episodes, like I said, Jack's second episode with his dad, obviously Walkabout with Locke, we're coming up on it, but Numbers with Hurley in in 2 episodes from now. What was the other one that I really liked? Those, like, there's a reason why, and now this episode, Outlaws, there's a reason why those episodes have been my favorite so far, because that's the one where, again, just and obviously Raised by Another, the Claire solo episode, because those episodes just are, the flashbacks and everything that's happening on the island is working so well in tandem and just complementing itself at every bit. It just works so well. So, not too much else that you want to talk about, unless you wanted to talk about what's going on with Charlie, which is kind of just like a brief wrap-up of last week's episode. And they're like, okay, we're done. We're putting Charlie, we're wrapped with everything Charlie-wise. We're going to put him on the back burner until next season when Charlie starts to go through a little bit of his villain arc. So
yeah, he's had a few big moments, so now he has to sit back for a while, just meditate on the beach.
Exactly. Yep. So like I said, next week is our next Jin and Sun flashback. Then we get our first and only Hurley flashback this season. The week after that, and then the Hurley flashback. Numbers, like I said, very, very important episode. That's going to be our cap for 2024. We'll take the last week of December off, and then we come back in January, and we have only returning characters. Once we get to January, we've got a Saeed episode, a Locke episode, and then another Jack and another Kate episode before we get to Exodus.
Another Kate
episode, unfortunately. And I know, they love torturing us. We're going to have a lot more of that, unfortunately, to deal with as time goes on. But then we get to the finale, Exodus, and then we get into season 2 where things really start to get heated up. So, Luke, with all that being said, where can the good people follow you on the interwebs?
We're now in a deeper state of December, so you should subscribe to Look Reviews, because I'm starting to map out the video. Wicked, unfortunately, did not make it into the top 10, although I enjoyed it very much. But yeah. Over there, YouTube.
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly with you on your Wicked sentiments. I enjoyed it. I had a fun time podcasting with Cora about it last week. It is not making my top 10. I have a couple more movies to see in December.
If it wins Best Picture, I'm going to...
It's not winning Best Picture. There's no shot it's winning Best Picture. But...
Variety can, slow down.
Yeah.
Cut to 3 months later.
Variety's got to chill out with some of their early on predictions. Like, they were predicting Jeremy Strong to get in for supporting, and even I knew. I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry. As great as he was in that movie, the argument to be made that it's between him and Culkin for giving the best supporting performance of the year, if not for the fact that Culkin, I would argue, is co-lead. They're not going to nominate the dude who plays... Like, if they're not nominating Sebastian Stan as Trump, they're definitely not nominating Jeremy Strong as Roy Cohn, the fucking devil incarnate himself. Like, come on, that's not happening. So,
But it looks like Flow might get into the top
Oh,
5.
Flow is getting in for animated feature for sure. I'm planning on watching that sometime this week. I'm very, very excited to watch
We
that.
need the national holiday over here if that happens. Please.
Seriously, you guys should.
Appreciate it.
I'm considering doing like a special bonus podcast episode that will just be like consider Latvia Day. What's it called for if we end up reviewing Flow on the podcast. So, and as far as regular Talkin TV episodes, Dustin and I are still going to be going strong. We've got a couple more actors. We're going to do at least 1 or 2 more Actors Hall of Fames before the year wraps. And then we're also going to do another episode on the state of movies, kind of wrapping 2024. And then, Luke, I think I'm going to have you on for our top 10 best movies of 24 when we do that in January. And then I'm also considering, I think I'm going to do a top 10 movies so far of the decade, since we're officially halfway through the 2020s, which is absolutely insane. And my brain is still processing that part of my brain still feels like it's a COVID, and that was almost 5 years ago now. So yeah, absolutely insane. So you guys can follow me with everything going on at Movie Nerd Reviews across all platforms. Be sure to subscribe to Talkin TV on YouTube, Spotify, all the places. You guys know where to go at this point. And yeah, like I said, 2 more episodes of Talkin Lost before we wrap 2024. It's been a crazy year, but it's been a fun year. So for myself and Luke, get lost. We'll see you guys next week.